Hello and welcome back to Bayside Stories. Today's books are a random assortment of stories and information about the Daedra. In Mundus, different cultures have different views on the Daedra and the other divines. So I'm going to collect and read all the different books and stories I can find, so that we may be able to see how the cultures view and interact with the Daedra, Aedra, and their other divines. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those upcoming videos. And on your screen there are timestamps for each book and a few locations you can find them if you want to collect them for yourself. Like the video if you want to see more of my content, and it will help the algorithm show you more Elder Scrolls content that you may enjoy. And it helps me know that I'm doing the right thing. Remember to pray before you go to sleep tonight, and have a wonderful day, evening, or night, and of course, enjoy the stories. On Oblivion by Moraine Zenas. It is improper, however customary, to refer to the denizens of the dimension of Oblivion as demons. This process probably dates to the Elysian doctrines of the First Era prophet Maruk, which, rather amusingly, forbade traffic with daimons, and then neglected to explain what daimons were. It is most probable that daimons is a misspelling or etymological rendition of Daedra, the old elven word for those strange, powerful creatures of uncertain motivation who hail from the dimension of Oblivion. Daedra is actually the plural form, the singular is Daedroth. In a later tract by King Hael the Pious of Skyrim, almost 1,000 years after the publication of the original doctrine, the evil machinations of his political enemies are compared to the wickedness of the demons of Oblivion. Their depravity equals that of Sanguine itself. They are cruel as Boethia, calculating as Mulikbal, and as mad as Sheogorath. Hael the Pious thus long-windedly introduced 4 of the Daedra lords to the written records. But the written record is not, after all, the best way to research Oblivion and the Daedra who inhabit it. Those who traffic with daimons seldom wish it to be a matter of public account. Nevertheless, scattered through the literature of the First Era are diaries, journals, notices for witch burnings, and guides for Daedra slayers. These I have used as my primary source material. They are at least as trustworthy as the Daedra lords I have actually summoned and spoken with at length. Apparently, Oblivion is a place composed of many lands, thus the many names of which Oblivion is synonymous: Cold Harbor, Quagmire, Moonshadow, etc. It may be correctly supposed that each land of Oblivion is ruled over by one prince, the Daedric princes of whose name appear over and over in ancient records, though this is not an infallible test of their authenticity or explicit existence to be sure, are the aforementioned Sanguine, Boethia, Mulikbal, and Sheogorath, and in addition, Azura, Mephala, Clavicus Vile, Vermina, Malakath, Hermaeus, or Hermaeus, or Hermias, or Herma. There seems to be no one accepted spelling: Mora, Namira, Chigalag, Nocturnal, Merundagon, and Periite. From my experience, Daedra are a very mixed lot. It is almost impossible to categorize them as a whole except for their immense power and penchant for extremism. Be that as it may, I have attempted to do so in a few cases, purely for the sake of scholastic expedience. Merundagon, Mulikbal, Periite, Boethia, and Vermina are among the most consistently demonic of the Daedra, in the sense that their spheres seem to be destructive in nature. The other Daedra can, of course, be equally destructive, but seldom purely for the sake of destruction, as these 5 can. Nor are the previous 5 identical in their destructiveness. Merundagon seems to prefer natural disasters, earthquakes and volcanoes, for venting his anger. Mulikbal elects the employment of other Daedra, and Boethia inspires the armies of mortal warriors. Periite's sphere seems to be pestilence, and Vermina's torture. For preparation for the next installment in my series, I will be investigating 2 matters that have intrigued me since I began my career as a Daedra researcher. The first is on one particular Daedroth, perhaps yet another Daedra prince, referred to in multiple articles of Incunabulum as Hircine. Hircine has been called the huntsman of the princes and the father of man-beasts, but I have yet to find anyone who can summon him. The other, and perhaps more doubtful goal I have, is to find practical means for mortal men to pass through to Oblivion. It has always been my philosophy that we need only fear that which we do not understand, and with that in mind, I ever pursue my objective. The Book of Daedra. Azura, whose sphere is dusk and dawn, the magic in between realms of twilight, known as Moonshadow, Mother of the Rose, and Queen of the Night Sky. Boethia, whose sphere is deceit and conspiracy, and the secret plots of murder, assassination, treason, and unlawful overthrow of authority. Clavigus Vile, whose sphere is the granting of power and wishes through ritual invocations and pact. Ormeus Mora, whose sphere is scrying of the tides of fate, of the past and future, as read in the stars and heavens, and in whose domain are the treasures of knowledge and memory. Ursine, whose sphere is the hunt, the sport of Daedra, the great game, the chase, known as the huntsman and the father of man-beasts. Malakath, whose sphere is the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the keeper of the sworn oath and the bloody curse. Merun Dagon, whose sphere is destruction, change, revolution, energy, and ambition. Mephala, whose sphere is obscure to mortals, known by the names web spinner, spinner, and spider, whose only consistent theme seems to be interfering in the affairs of mortals for her amusement. Meridia, whose sphere is obscure to mortals, who is associated with the energies of living things. Moleg Ball, whose sphere is the domination and enslavement of mortals, whose desire is to harvest the souls of mortals and to bring mortal souls within his sway by spreading seeds of strife and discourse in the mortal realms. Namira, whose sphere is the ancient darkness, known as the Spirit Daedra, ruler of sundry dark and shadowy spirits, associated with spiders, insects, slugs, and other repulsive creatures which inspire mortals with an instinctive revulsion. Nocturnal, whose sphere is the night and darkness, who is known as the Night Mother. Periite, whose sphere is the ordering of the lowest orders of Oblivion, known as the Taskmaster. Sanguine, whose sphere is hedonistic revelry and debauchery and passionate indulgence of darker natures. Sheogorath, whose sphere is madness and whose motivations are unknown. Vernima, whose sphere is the realm of dreams and nightmares, and from whose realm issues forth evil omens. Especially marked for special interest under the heading Malakath, you find a reference to Scourge, blessed by Malakath, and dedicated to use of mortals. In short, the reference suggests that any Daedra attempting to invoke the weapon's power will be expelled into the void stream of Oblivion. Of the legendary artifacts of the Daedra, many are well known, like Azura's Star and Sheogorath's Wabbajack. Others are less well known, like Scourge, Macken's Hammer, Bane of Daedra. Yet though Malakath blessed Scourge to be potent against his Daedra kin, he thought not that it should fall into Daedric hands, than to serve as a tool for private wars among Katifa and Forsaken. Thus did Malakath curse the device, such that, should any dark ken seek to invoke its power, the void should open and swallow the Daedra, and purge him into Oblivion's void stream, from thence to pathfind back to the real and unreal world in the full order of time. Invocation of Azura by Sigilla Parada. For 300 years I have been a priestess of Azura, the Daedric princess of Moonshadow, mother of the rose and queen of the night sky. Every Hoggathum, which we celebrate on the 21st of the first seed, we summon her for guidance, as well as to offer things of worth and beauty to her majesty. She is a cruel but wise mistress. We do not invoke her on any Hoggathum troubled by thunderstorms, for those nights belong to the Mad One, Sheogorath, even if they do coincide with the occasion. Azura, at such times, understands our caution. Azura's invocation is a very personal one. I have been a priestess to 3 other Daedric princes, but Azura values the quality of her worshippers and the truth behind our adoration of her. When I was a dark elven maiden of 16, I joined my grandmother's coven, worshippers of Moleg Bal, the schemer princess. Blackmail, extortion, and bribery are as much the weapons of the witches of Moleg Bal as is dark magic. The invocation of Moleg Bal is held on the 20th of Evening Star, except during stormy weather. The ceremony is seldom missed, but Moleg Bal often appears to her cultists in mortal guise on other dates. When my grandmother died in an attempt to poison the heir of Firewatch, I re-examined my faith in the cult. My brother was a wizard of the cult of Boethia, and from what he told me, the Dark Warrior was closer to my spirit than the treacherous Moleg Bal. Boethia is a warrior princess who acts more overtly than any other Daedroth. After years of skulking and scheming, it felt good to perform acts for my mistress which had direct and immediate consequence. Besides, I like it that Boethia was a Daedra of the Dark Elves. Our cult would summon her on the day we called the Gauntlet, the second of Sun's Dusk. Bloody competitions would be held in her honor, and the duels and battles would continue until 9 cultists were killed at the hands of other cultists. Boethiah cared little for her cultists, she only cared for our blood. I do think I saw her smile when I accidentally slew my brother in a sparring session. My horror, I think, greatly pleased her. I left the cult soon after that. Boethiah was too impersonal for me, too cold. I wanted a mistress of greater depth. For the next 18 years of my life, I worshipped no one. Instead, I read and researched. It was in an old and profane tome that I came upon the name of Nocturnal. Nocturnal, the night mistress. Nocturnal, the unfathomable. As the book prescribed, I called to her on her holy day, the 3rd of Hearthfire. At last, I had found the personal mistress I had so long desired. I strove to understand her labyrinthian philosophy, the source of her mysterious pain. Everything about her was dark and shrouded, even the way she spoke and the acts she required of me. It took years for me to understand the simple fact that I could never understand Nocturnal. Her mystery was as essential to her as savagery was to Boethiah, or treachery was to Mulek Bal. To understand Nocturnal, it is to negate her, to pull back the curtains cloaking her realm of darkness. As much as I loved her, I recognized the futility of unraveling her enigma. I turned instead to her sister, Azura. Azura is the only Daedra princess I have ever worshipped who seemed to care about her followers. Mulek Bal wanted my mind, Boethiah wanted my arms, and Nocturnal, perhaps my curiosity. Azura wanted all of that, and our love above all. Not our abjective slavery, but our honest and genuine caring in all its forms. It is important to her that our emotions be engaged in her worship, and our love must also be directed inward. If we love her but hate ourselves, she feels our pain. I will, for all time, have no other mistress. Varieties of Daedra by Irenia Dethron, healer and dissident priest. There is little chance of us ever understanding the various orders of Daedra and their relationships to their Daedra lords and their dominions. Of the varieties of Daedra that appear in our world, and the varieties of their relationships to their fellows and their Daedra Patreons, there is no end. In one place and time, they are seen to be this, and in another place and time, they are seen to be the opposite, and in another place and time, they are seen to be both this and that, in completely contradictory terms. What Daedra serve this prince? What Daedra give orders? And what Daedra serve? And in what hierarchy? And under what circumstance? What Daedra exist in fellowship with one another? And what Daedra have eternal enmity to one another? And what Daedra are solitary or social, and by turns, solitary or social? There are no limits to the varieties of behaviors that may be observed, and in one place they may be this, and in another place they may be that, and all rules describing them are always found to be contradictory and in exception to others. Further, from who may we seek answers to our questions about these orders? From mortals who know little but what they may observe from other worlds. From the gods who speak in riddles of enigmas wrapped in mystery, and who keep things from us to better preserve their dominion over us. From the Daedra themselves, who are never the models of straightforwardness or truth-telling, but rather are famous for misstatements and obfuscation. And even were the Daedra to speak the truth, how can we know if they know themselves, or that there is any truth about them that is to be known? Or are all arrangements among the Daedra protean and ever subject to change? In short, what is to be known is little, and what is to be trusted is nothing. These things being said, I shall venture to relate what I have observed and heard of the relationships of the servants of Lord Dagon in my brief service of the Telvanni wizard, Davoth Fyr, when I sought him out and offered to bring peace to the victims of Corpus in his sanitarium. Once the prophecy of the Incarnate had been fulfilled, and Dagath-Ur had been destroyed, and the blight had been banished from the island of Vardenfall forever. Davoth Fyr told me that he, by choice, trafficked only with 2 Daedra powers, Mehrunes Dagon and Azura. Azura, he said, knows and understands all things, and declines to speak of these things, or only speaks in riddles. Mehrunes Dagon, on the other hand, out of pride, fixity of purpose, and predictable lack of subtlety in thought, knew nothing and understood nothing, and was inclined to speak freely and without falsehood. Davoth Fyr said that Dagon's chief servants, the Dremora, were like him in pride, fixed purpose, and lack of subtlety, with an addition of the peculiar trait of honor and loyalty, both within their class and within their relationship to the Lord Dagon. And Davoth Fyr said that Dremora were ordered into clans and castes. and these clans and castes were well defined. Individual Dremora might rise or fall in ranks, or move back and forth among clans, but only when regulated by complex oaths, and only at the will and pleasure of their lord Dagon. The Dremora referred to themselves as the Kine, the people, contrasting themselves to the other Daedra, whom they consider unthinking animals. The term Kainaz refers to a member of the Dremora race, he of the Kine. The least of Kine caste are churls, the undistinguished rabble of the lowest rank of Dremora. Churls are obsequious to superiors, but ferociously cruel to humans and other Daedra. Next in the ranks are the Kaitifs, creatures of uncalculating zeal, energy without discrimination. Kaitifs are used as irregulars in the faction wars of the Daedra, as berserkers and shock troopers, undisciplined and unreliable, but eager and willing. The highest of the regular rank and file of Dremora troops are the Kinevals, warrior knights who have distinguished themselves in battle and shown the deliberate steadiness of potential war leaders. Above the rank and file warriors of the Churl, Katafa, and Kineval castes are the officer castes. A Kinereeve is a clan sheriff or clan officer. Kinereeves are typically associated either with a clan fighting unit or an administrative office in the order of battle. The Kine March is the lord and high officer of a Daedric citadel, outpost, or gate. A Kine March's command is usually associated both with a unit and with a fief, a location or territory for which he is responsible. Above the Kine Marcher is the Markainaz, or Grand Duke. The Markainaz is Lord of Lords and a member of the Markain, Mehrunes Dagon's Council of Lords. The highest rank of Dremora is the Velkanaz, or Prince. This warrior duke is a member of the Vulcan, Mehrunes Dagon's personal guard. The Vulcanized are rarely encountered on Tamriel. Normally, they remain by Mehrunes Dagon's side, or serve as a commander of operations of particular importance or interest of Dagon. Of the varieties of other Daedra I encounter while I serve Daevarthvir's Corposarium, Ogrim, and Golden Saints, Daedroths and Winged Twilights, Scamps and Clanfear, there is much that might be said, but little that is helpful or reliable. I did note, however, when Fear sought a Daedra of character like unto Dremora, but of greater power and greater inclination for independence and initiative, or solely as a master, he summoned Zivilai, who are like the Dremora in personality and temperament, except that they hate subordination, and are liable to disloyalty and betrayal when they feel that they have not been treated with the proper deference and respect. The feral beast-like Daedra, like the Clanfear and the Daedroth, appear in the service of many different Daedric powers, and may represent common creatures existing like wild animals in the wilderness of Oblivion. Other savage, semi-intelligence creatures like Scamps and Spidered Daedra may also be found in the realm of various Daedra lords. The case of elemental Atronachs, on the other hand, is less certain. Flame and Frost Atronachs, for example, appear to be highly intelligent, but not all varieties of elemental Atronachs seem to be social or to have the power of speech. Daevarthvir prefers not to summon or deal with these creatures, had little experience with them, and showed no inclination to speculate upon their nature, so I learned little about them in my time in Tel Fyr. Darkest Darkness. In Morrowind, both worshippers and sorcerers summon lesser Daedra and bound Daedra as servants and instruments. Most Daedric servants can be summoned by sorcerers only for very brief periods, with the most fragile and tenuous frameworks of command and binding. This fortunately limits their capacity for mischief, though, in only a few minutes, most of the servants can do terrible harm to their summoners as well as their enemies. Worshippers may bind other Daedric servants to this plane through rituals and pacts. Such arrangements result in the Daedric servants remaining on this plane indefinitely, or at least until their bodily manifestations on this plane are destroyed, precipitating their supernatural essence back to Oblivion. Whenever Daedra are encountered at Daedric ruins or in tombs, they are almost invariably long-term visitors to our plane. Likewise, lesser entities bound by their Daedric lords into weapons and armor may be summoned for brief periods, or may persist indefinitely as long as they are not destroyed or banished. The class of bound weapons and bound armors summoned by temple followers and conjurers are examples of short-term bindings. Daedric artifacts like Mehrunes' razor and the Mask of Clavicus Vile are examples of long-term bindings. The Tribunal Temple of Morrowind has incorporated the veneration of Daedra as lesser spirits subservient to the immortal Almsivi, the triune godhead of Amalexia, Sothasil, and Vivek. The subordinated Daedra are divided into the good Daedra and the bad Daedra. The good Daedra have willingly submitted to the authority of Almsivi. The bad Daedra are rebels who defy Almsivi, treacherous kin who are more often adversaries than allies. The good Daedra are Boethia, Azura, and Mafala. The Hunger is a powerful and violent Lesser Daedra associated with Boethia, father of plots, a sinuous, long-limbed, long-tailed creature with a beast skull head, noted for its paralyzing touch and its ability to disintegrate weapons and armor. The Winged Twilight is a messenger of Azura, goddess of dusk and dawn. Winged Twilights resemble the feral harpies of the West, though the feminine aspects of the Winged Twilights are more ravishing, and their long, sharp-hooked talons are immensely more deadly. Spider Daedra are the servants of Mephala, taking the form of a humanoid creature with a naked upper head, torso, and arms of human proportion, mounted on the 8 legs and armored carapace of a giant spider. Unfortunately, these Daedra are so fierce and irrational that they cannot be trusted to heed the commands of the spinner. As a consequence, few sorcerers are willing to either summon or bind such creatures in Morrowind. The bad Daedra are Mehrunes Dagon, Malakath, Sheogorath, and Molag Bal. 3 lesser Daedra associated with Mehrunes Dagon: the agile and pesky Scamp, the ferocious and beast-like Clanfear, and the noble and deadly Dermora. The crocodile-headed humanoid Daedra, called the Daedroth, is a servant of Molag Bal, while the giant but dim-witted Orgrim is a servant of Malakath. Sheogorath's lesser Daedra, the Golden Saint, a half-clothed human female in appearance, is highly resistant to magic and a dangerous spellcaster. Another type of lesser Daedra often encountered in Morrowind is the Atronach, or Elemental Daedra. Atronach have no binding kinship or alignments with the Daedra lords, serving one realm or another at whim, shifting sides according to seduction, compulsion, or opportunity.